But Murdaugh, as you know, he's already serving a life sentence without parole for the murders of his wife and son. He's attempting to appeal that conviction, as you know. Do you see this most recent decision having any meaningful impact on litigation that's going to be happening moving forward?
Well, I think that it had a lot to do, or something to do. It had to be in the back of Judge Gergel's mind when he was sentencing Alex Murdaugh to more than the recommended amount of time, that there was a possibility still out there that he could get a new trial in state court. And if he gets that new trial, then there's no guarantee that he's convicted. So there is a possibility that he could have his sentence moved from state court to federal court on the financial crimes. And because of that, I think that if I was Judge Gergel, it would definitely be in the back of my mind that I had to ensure that Alex Murdaugh does not eventually get out of prison because of the things that he did. The other thing is the fact that he's a member of the legal profession, and he's not just a regular crook out there stealing from people. We have to be able to believe in our legal profession and in officers of the court. And for that reason, I can see why he gave him a much harsher sentence than he was otherwise within the guidelines to do.
Yeah, he definitely knows the ins and outs, Murdaugh, that is. So prosecutors, Mandy, they want to keep many of the FBI statements secret in this case, saying they're still investigating the missing money and who may have helped Murdaugh steal it. What could be hiding in those documents?
Oh my goodness, there's so much. You know, he stole over $9 million. And I knew Alex. It's hard to imagine that he could figure out how to do all of that all by himself. And so there is a thinking among a lot of people that surely he had help. And, we hear, rumors and tales of people that he was extremely close with that one would think they would know. I don't think it's his family, by the way, but I think that there is a sense that he had help. And he failed the polygraph, or it's argued that he failed the polygraph in that regard. So I think that will come into play. I don't know what's lurking. I have ideas that I don't want to share because I have absolutely no proof of them. Just there's an inkling there, I think, among a lot of people that where there's smoke, there's fire, and there probably were some people who helped him.
And so many, it's hard not to think about the victims of some of these alleged crimes. Murdaugh claims his opioid addiction was the reason he stole his client's money, but federal prosecutors argued there was no reason for him to spend millions. Will these victims ever be properly compensated, in your view, Mandy?
Well, I mean, I think monetarily they have been compensated. We know that, objectively speaking. But then there's the time value of money. There's the fact that so many of these victims suffered some homelessness, others just living in poverty when they had already been awarded money. Alex just stole it. They can't get that time back. No amount of money is going to compensate them for the time that they lost without the monetary reward that they had already actually settled for because of Alex, and that Alex had just stolen it and was living high on their money. So they're compensated monetarily, but when you talk about pieces of life, which that's time is what life is made of, they've lost a lot of time that they could have had that money and it would have made a difference in their lives. So in that regard, they'll never be compensated.
Yeah, emotional distress and all the rest. I appreciate you pointing that out. So, Mandy, moving forward, how do you see Murdaugh's legal team now strategizing with this most recent decision coming down?
Well, I think, and I don't know for sure, but I think from what they've been doing, it seems to me that their biggest strategy is not really to make him a free man. It is to move him to more comfortable quarters. And more comfortable quarters are definitely going to be federal prison rather than state prison. And the way to do that is to get him a new trial, on the murder charge to get an acquittal on the murder charge and be able to move him to federal court where he can serve this sentence in federal court. I don't think even even if the murder charges were completely thrown out, that he would ever see the light of day from prison. But
thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.